Alright, hey guys, we're going to continue our lessons on equivalent expressions. First, we're going to review and then we're going to learn something new today. As I am going over this, if you don't have these notes, make sure you write them, and I'm going to be adding more notes. You're going to add to those. Alright, so last week we talked about different equivalent expressions. Okay, so we talked about different properties that we can see if expressions are equivalent. So there was the commutative property. We saw two sides that were equal. Remember, what we had to do was if there was no expression, if there's no variable, we had to just solve for each side and see if they were equal. Now, if there was a variable, what we could do is we could just pretend any number was that variable, but if there was more than one variable, we had to put it in for that same thing. So here we said if x equals 4, then these two sides would be equal. So that's commutative property of addition, commutative property of multiplication, associative property of addition, we have parentheses in here, associative property of multiplication, and then we got to kind of some of the harder stuff, okay? We got to distributive property. Remember, distributive means to give anything on the outside of the parentheses, we give it to everything inside of the parentheses, so we multiply it. So this expression is the same thing as this expression. 2 times 3, which is shown here, 2 times 4, which is shown here, and we know those two sides are equal. Then we have the identity property of addition. We just have two numbers being added on the left or the right, okay, and then one number on the right. And then the identity property of multiplication. Same, similar thing, but we just put multiplication. Today, what I really want to focus on is the distributive property, okay? So, now, when we were making fractions, we saw different fractions like 2 over 4, okay? When we saw a fraction like 2 over 4, we know that there were other fractions that were equal to it. And we figured out different ways to make fractions equal was either by making them larger, by multiplying them. We multiplied this by 2. We would get 4 out of 8. But the main factor was that these two were equal. This was the same thing as this, just shown in a different way. That's the same thing as this right here. 2 times 9 is the same thing as 18. It's just shown in a different way by multiplying two factors. Now, back here. Now we know that 2 over 4 is also the same thing as 1/2. And that's by dividing, because 2 goes into 2 and 4. So we know that these two are equal. All I'm doing is changing this fraction into this fraction by manipulating it one way. So what we're going to do today is going to kind of be doing the same thing with expressions. Okay, so let's start off with this example. Okay, I'm going to put out three different types of expressions on one side and three different types of expressions on the other side. What I want us to do is try to figure out which one of these match. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this. I'm going to change this to 2 right here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change it to 6. So what I want to do is I want to see which of these expressions are equal to this side. So I have these expressions and I have these expressions. So I want to figure out how these equal to this. So one way that we can do it is by going through each one since they all have a variable and see what they equal. Now, because they have a variable, we're going to have to substitute it. So what we can do is we can do that. Okay, so I'll start with this one, 3x plus 9. So I'm going to say that x equals 2 for all of them. Okay, remember we can just plug in any number. I'm doing 2 because it's the smallest. So I'm going to plug in 2 for this. So I'm going to do 3 times 2 plus 9. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 9, and that's equal to 15. So I'm going to see which one of these is also equal to 15. So let me try to do that. And to get ahead of you, I could go through each one and do that, okay? Or I'm just gonna go fast forward, I'm gonna go here, okay? Because here's what I did. And I plugged this in, okay? Plug this in, we have 3, 2 plus 3. I do parentheses first, so this is 5. And when there's a parentheses outside, that means we're multiplying. So 5 times 3 is equal to 15. So I know that these two match, okay? This one and this one. All right. Now, what else I can do is instead of plugging in for that variable, what I can do is I have this equation right here, 3x plus 9. And I have this, 3 parentheses x plus 3. Now, we have this parentheses here. Now, we've seen this before. Now, if we look up here, this is a similar problem to this because we have a number outside and we have a parentheses. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to distribute the 3 in here. Okay, all right. So remember when we're distributing, we're multiplying. So we have 3 times x. When you have a number times a variable, if you don't know that variable yet, you're going to just leave it. So we're going to do 3x, okay, plus 3 times 3 is 9. And now look at this. I have an equation that is exactly the same as this equation right here. So this is how I know that they're equal. Not only did I find out what their numbers are if I plugged in a variable, but I found out that their equations are exactly the same if I distributed. So that's an easy way to figure that out. So what I want to do is I want to do the same thing. Anywhere that I see a distributed method, I'm going to do that. Okay. So here, number 2, I'm going to distribute this 3 into this parentheses. So 3 into x, 3 into 1. Okay. So distributing means multiplying. 3 times x is just 3x. Plus, because there's a plus sign here, 3 times 1 is 3. So I have 3 times 1. I want to figure out which matches it. We have one right here at the top. So this directly matches this up at the top. Okay? So, now, the only thing left over is this. Okay? Now, I know this is probably okay, but let me just double check it just to make sure. And as I'm writing it, make sure you have these in your notes. Okay? So, this is already solved, but this is distributive method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute it. Okay? 3 into 2, 3 into x. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times, and then I'm going to put the plus, sorry. Okay, don't forget that. 3 times x is 3x. And they match. Okay, perfect. So I have this here, and I have this here. Okay, and I know that these two match together. I just don't want to get them separated, so I know that they match together. Now, what I want you guys to do now is after you're done taking these notes, I want you to go to page 277 in your notes, okay? And that page should look like this. You're going to have some examples, and I want you to work those out. You have list A and list B. You're going to either plug them in, like they did here, or you can do the distributive method, and you can figure out which numbers are equal to each other. All right? So, if you didn't catch anything on this or you're still confused, remember you can rewind, okay? You can catch up on anything that you need to do and you can watch this at home. All right, guys. All right.